is the Chamber of Parliament is ongoing as we speak, awaiting the arrival of the Finance Minister in Ofori-Atta to present the 2024 budget. We have a number of the key members of staff of the Finance Ministry already present. So that is a clear indication that the Finance Minister will be in the chamber shortly. So that is what we are waiting for. And this all-important document that the Finance Minister is going to present to detail government's policies and also the fiscal direction going into election 2024 and that election year and what normally happens, the case of overspending. And that's one of the issues that we'll deal with, even though the Fiscal Responsibility Act has been suspended. And that's one that the Honorable Haruna Idrisu wants Parliament to restore the Fiscal Responsibility Act to check government spending going into election year. You recall also that that is not the only issue that has actually come up as a matter of concern for the persons who are watching how the economy is playing out. Dr. Sarkodie is back also together with Gideon Ayi-Owu, partner, tax and regulatory, Deloitte Ghana. Dr. Sarkodie is a lecturer at the Department of Economics, University of Ghana, Lagos. Dr. Sarkodie, that proposal for the Fiscal Responsibility Act to be restored, at least just to check government spending and so to ensure that this cycle of fiscal indiscipline that we see in an election year would be addressed. Is this one that you would support?
I support it because when you look at the developments of the public debt, we identified three key determinants, i.e. the budget deficit, the off-budget borrowing, and the exchange rates. The budget deficit accounts for 48% of the developments in the public debt. The exchange rate accounts for 29% of the development in the public debt. And then the off-budget borrowing accounts for 23% of the development in the public debt. So once you're able to control the gap between revenue and expenditure, which is a budget deficit, then you are controlling about 48% of the developments in the public debt. So I agree that we should restore that clause in the Fiscal Responsibility Act of not going beyond 5%. The budget deficit should not go beyond 5% of GDP. And not only that, I think in the Act, we should also control spending. We should give them so much power to restrict the government, to discipline the government in controlling spending. I think sometimes we know that the revenue is not enough, but some of the expenditures, we should be prudent in the spending. The council, can we give the council more power to prosecute? Can we give the council more power? Can it be an authority that can stand on its ground, have its own rules to punish anybody that goes? Because we have the sector ministers. So if you are a Greek minister, trade minister, you overspend, you go beyond a certain expenditure line, then they should have the authority, the council should have the authority to prosecute, to punish, and to check them very well. So I support that we come back to the act of 5%, not exceeding 5% of GDP, that it will control, but we should add the expenditure management, and we should give them the authority and the power to punish any sector minister or any other government official that goes beyond that.
So it's a punitive measure you want added,
of course,
to it.
Of course. You asked me a question about the discipline side, and when you crack the whip, you will discipline somebody.
Of course.
So the council should have an authority. In my view, I think the council should have an authority to punish and discipline all government officials who may go contrary to what the rule says.
And Samson Asaki Awingobit is the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. He's also joining us. Samagobe, thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning or good afternoon to your
Good afternoon. Yeah.
cherished viewers all over the world and Ghana, and I greet importers and exporters all over business community, and my senior colleagues here that I'm meeting on your set. Alfred.
I'm going to come to you.
Okay, right.
Yes. On that bit about the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it was suspended for a specific reason because we were dealt a heavy blow due to the impact of COVID and so on. That decision has not been reversed to date. Is it one that you would expect be announced in this budget?
I think even if it's not announced, something to that effect to curb spending and expenditure for government should be expected. If you look at the various discussions leading to the budget announcement today, it's been on aggressive mobilization of revenue and also looking at the expenditure or spending of government. So even if they do not touch it directly, I would expect something around the expenditure should be done in terms of curbing government programs and making sure that there's efficiency in how government goes about in making this expenditure. We should also be mindful of the fact that they had their own post-COVID program of economic growth. And one of it was that government will have to rationalize some of this expenditure that they make. So I would expect government to say something about it, either directly or indirectly.
Now, and then also, we've seen the IMF, and I'm going to come to you, Asaki, a bit. We've seen the IMF ask for zero financing from the Bank of Ghana. There are some economists who think otherwise, that really it's going to make it really difficult for government, especially because of the economic situation we find ourselves in. But if you look at the intent behind that proposal by the IMF, taking into consideration what's been happening over the years, is it one that is going to make any significant difference? And would you support that? This is to both of you. I'll start off with you. So.
Okay, well, so for me, we all understand the importance of the central bank in financing governments, but we currently have the situation where we have significant inflationary rates, and then we understand the part that the central bank played in it. It's tight for governments, and then having a zero financing for government means that they then have to only rely on their tax revenue or tax mobilization. And that alone itself is a cause of concern because most businesses now are saying that we have been overtaxed. And so it needs a lot more creativity in how governments should be able to come up with revenue for growth without at the same time overtaxing businesses. So it needs a lot more innovation, and I would like to see what my economist friend will say about that, because if you take the central bank's financing from it, knowing how difficult it is for government to also go on the market to borrow now, it means either tax revenue or going on the local bond market, and this is really not sustainable overall in the long effect. So a lot more understanding, a lot more development or innovation or creativity would have to be taken here to give some governments a lot of flexibility to be able to churn out its development agenda.
Let me give the background.
Yes.
We are with an IMF program. The government has not been able to raise Eurobonds since January 2022. It's only borrowing domestically, but at a higher cost. The only option is domestic revenue, which we are not doing well as a country. The central bank, or the Bank of Ghana, is the bank of the government. The government is the only customer of the central bank. And the bank also acts as a lender of last resort. And you are asking the lender not to lend. And so you know my position on this already. I oppose the 0% financing. The Ghanaian economy is too young to be talking about 0% financing. Even the advanced economies do not do 0% financing. So we should come back to the up to 5%, up to 5% financing from the central bank, because the government cannot go externally to borrow. It's borrowing at a higher cost. So we should allow the Bank of Ghana to finance the budget deficit up to, we have a capping. The capping is 5%, not beyond 5% of previous year's tax revenue. If you want more financing from the central bank, and that's the same thing, the point ties into what my brother said. because it's 5% of previous year's tax revenue. So if you are able to raise more tax revenue, then in the subsequent years, you can get more financing in terms of quantum, in terms of the amount from the central bank. So the 0% financing this year is because the BOG made losses. So perhaps we could pardon them for not financing the government for this year. But 2024 going, I oppose to the 0% financing.
By the IMF?
Yes, by the IMF. You know, they made that recommendation in 2015, and some of us opposed it, and we even wrote articles, and we submitted some of our research papers to Parliament. Parliament debated it, and it was reversed to up to 5%.
They also make reference
so
to the
we
fact
have provided
in
the
2016,
context. Within the
there was
context,
no, 2016, there was
within
no
the
Bank of Ghana
context.
financing.
Alfred, I'm saying that's why I provided the context.
Indeed.
The context now is that the government is not able to go to the external market. The government just completed DDEP, is going for exchange a program on the external front. The government is borrowing domestically at a higher cost. So the only available option is to raise revenue domestically, which we know it will take some time. So the Bank of Ghana is there to support its customer. And the only customer of the central bank is the government. I recommend that we revert to the 5%, up to 5% financing of the central bank. 0% financing is not good for an emerging economy like Ghana.
Thank you, Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie. Samson Asaki Awingobe, today is the day that you will expect that all your concerns will be addressed by the budget. Primary being the increased cost of doing business for you at the ports. What's happening at the ports right now? What's the situation?
Well, thank you very much. Alfred, before I will take on what happened at the port, I think today is a day that the MPS, those who came with the investor to take our port for some number of years to build, operate, and transfer to us, they finished the phase 1, and today was the day that we were commissioning the phase 2, including the machinery, the equipment that they brought in to make sure that our port, so MPS Terminal 3 phase 2, is, the short cutting is today, so that we will start to build that one as well. And that is why I delayed, because the president was there to support the team. I must say that I was sad when I was on my way coming. I listened to the Deputy Minister of Trade, my very good friend, Dr. Stephen Amwa, right? And then he was scandalous to have heard the Deputy Minister, who's supposed to be wooing investors, business community.
No, so what exactly did he say that you are not?
Exactly. I mean, he was trying to, I think you asked about the so much taxes on the business community. And he was trying to defend government. He was even to the extent that said they needed that taxes. But the point is, where have we have gotten to? Is it not the same government that brought us to where we are? Just like they are talking about overspending the fiscal policy at Bank of Ghana, that they knew very well that we cannot spend beyond 5%, yet they spend more than 5% in the Bank of Ghana. It's the same government that take the domestic exchange program. The same government that said we are not going to go to IMF. At the end of the day, because of the reckless expenditure, we are now putting it on the business community, saying that in the name of revenue. I strongly believe that we, the business community, take except from what the Deputy Minister have said about business community. Let me state emphatically, we do not expect to see any additional item of tax to be introduced today. If you go to the port today, our port is virtually well expanded. All the equipment that needed to make port, the modern port, we have it, yet cargo throughput is down. Where is the cargo? But you go to the market, you see commodity in the market. Where is it coming from? It's because our neighboring countries, doing business there, cost of doing business there is cheaper. So Ghanaian importers will send their container to Ivory Coast and then bring it through unapproved route to this country, evading the taxes, because if they brought it through our port, because of the the rigid taxes that they'll have to pay through. And Alfred, I think you know about the taxes already. So it is not a sack to sit here and tell you. Our VAT is the highest VAT so far as sub-region is concerned. 15%. Remember, before this government came to office in 2017, the import VAT at the port, we used to pay, if you have a BOE, bill of entry, we used to pay if my invoice value is 100,000 and it is rice, assuming it is rice, I pay a 20% import duty of rice. Then the calculation of that, and the accountants are here, they can give you the figures. Then you add it back to the 100,000 US dollar, or to be 100,000 Ghana cedis. Then you calculate 17.5% straight away. This 17.5%, when this government came, in that 17.5%, we have the get fund in, we have the health insurance in, making it one component. So straight away you strike it out. But what did they do? They amend the law to carve out get fund to be on its own, 2.5, to carve out health insurance to be on its own. Now, if you are calculating a duty of 20% import duty of $100,000, then you add it on. Then you take 12.5. Then you add it back. Then you take 2.5. Then you add it back. That's the 2.5, 2.5 could be get fund. Then you take another 2.5, which is the health insurance.
All of these are taxes.
It is a cost. Okay? Taking 70.5 straight away of maybe 120,000 is different from taking 70.5 away, 12.5, 2.5, 2.5. And now, the mid-year budget review of the 2023 budget saw an introduction of the additional 2.5 VAT, making the VAT now 50% flat. So at the moment, if you bring a BOE of 100,000, they will do 20% of rice, if it's a rice, 20% of the 100,000, 50% of add on, because they will add the 20,000, the 20% what they got, the amount that they got, they will add it back to the value of the 100,000. Then they will take 50%. Then you come back, then you add that figure. Maybe you got the 50,000, you add it back to 125, 110, maybe 110,000. Then you now take 2.5 VAT then of get fund. Then you add it back. Then you now take 2.5 VAT of health insurance. And therefore, the COVID levy, which COVID is no more a pandemic, which was announced to be by WHO, the authority that says that put restrictions in various countries, comes back to say all restrictions should be taken off. As we speak now, 1% COVID levy is still running concurrently. There's a 2% import levy. The 2017 budget that the government said you abolish 1%. The special import levy are in twofold. We have the 2% special import levy run concurrently, then 1%. The 1% was scrapped, abolished in 2017 budget. But the 2% is still running concurrently. However, the latter part of COVID, they brought the 1% back again. So there's nothing like tax waiver in the district. Then you've taken away the benchmark values. What is the benchmark values? If I can present an invoice of 100,000 US dollar value per the World Trade Organization, which we are signatory to, and then I wish I could have come to meet the Deputy Minister of Trade here.
Make your point.
We are signatory to the World Trade Organization. That says that if a customer presents a transactional value, accept it. If custom is doubting, custom can check with custom has what we call World Custom Organization. It's a body. If I'm bringing the goods from any of the countries that is a member to the World Custom Organization, custom can just ask for a declaration of export. In fact, let me tell you quickly, it is only Ghana that someone will sit there and say that Asaki can go to Committee and manufacture an invoice. But in other countries, there's a tax rebate. The more you export at the end of the year, your country reward you. Even in other countries, if you do that, you'll be hanged. In China and other areas, you'll be hanged for corruption. For knowing that, because you have to present the custom declaration value for export, your export documents, so that you have a rebate. So there's no way. But what do we do? In Ghana, we throw away with what the WTO says, World Trade Organization says that if Asaka present 100,000, accept the value, assessment based on that. But what do? They will raise your value to $200,000. Instead of 100,000, you say you raise it to $200,000. Then you say you give me benchmark value of what? 50%. Then you assess me. Then today you say, no, I'm no more going to do that. But if you present your invoice value, I'm not going to calculate, assess you based on your invoice value. That becomes another challenge for the business community. And that is why I said the last time on your network that people used to clear cargo or frozen food and pay like 83,000. Today, those people are paying over 300,000 Ghana cedis. And Honorable Steve, we sit here, you said what? You think that the business community doesn't have the right to complain. When your government...
I get the concern, and that does not also take away the fundamental issue he raised about the leakages in the system.
So,
wait, relax, I'm coming. The leakages in the system, which also benefits the players in there as well. The ports.
What are the benefits?
I'm coming. The ports in this country, over time, not just today, from the time even before the late President Mills stormed the place to come and talk about the level of corruption and the leakages in there, consistently we have seen some level of inefficiency in terms of the collection of revenue at the ports, you would admit that even if the systems are there, it doesn't efficiently and totally deal with the leakages, doesn't it?
I completely disagree with you.
Really?
Look, we have seen
So there are no leakages at the ports?
We have seen system has been replaced. Remember, during President Mills' time to President Mama time, they brought the West Blue. What was the reason? The reason was to help generate revenue. This government came and said, no, this West Blue should go. They brought ICOMs. And you remember, they have, for the number of years ICOM has been, GRA has increased revenue. And GRA themselves come, the Commissioner Generals come, private Commissioner General and the current Commissioner General come to say that this ICOM has actually raked revenue. If there's leakages in the port, doesn't mean that you should increase the taxes. You should look at where your own people. Look, why was it that my people on Kumasi people were complaining? You clear goods from the port here. You go through, look, you can, if an importer can even beat you, at the time of entering the data, okay, to go to custom head system, we call it CTSB at custom head office. The long room that they move it from Tema to the headquarters.
Yes.
Maybe at that time, maybe if the quantity is 1,007, the person make it 1,005 or 1,003. So the officer who's working on it, the classification and the valuation process that you have to go through before you become a BOE, become a tax bill for you to go and pay. Work with what you have. I have. So we say garbage in, garbage out, because he didn't see the container, he didn't see what was it. But according to what I've entered the container, they use that to assess me. But at the point of clearing, there is what we've called a field examination officer. They come, they go there. So if you go to the port, you see a custom officer carrying book and red pen. These days, they don't even carry book and red pen. They now use tablets. Okay, so he comes, they check the quantities. So sometimes when the quantity is 1,007 and you made 1,003, that's why we always ask people to go and pay sub-collection and put it open online. Importer will call and tell you, agent will call and tell you. They pay sub-collection every day. Quite apart from that, before you even leave the port, that you'll be clear to go, you have what we call, the custom have police called preventive. The preventive will then also take your bit of DOE, enter your number, check everything. If everything is okay, before they release you, then you do not pay all the taxes. Where is it? So I can tell you, there have been transformation, there have been reforms that has been put up in the port there, and there have been even task force upon task force at the point. Sometimes they even do joint operations to do joint examination at the port there. So they are the waste. It's the government that is the wasting. It's the government that is doing the leakages. The revenue, after collecting all the revenue, then they go and spend recklessly and come back and to be on the neck of the importer, the vulnerable importer, that he must always cough, you squeeze the stone and get the water out of it. This time around, the business community will not condone and connive the government. And I've told my friends from Guta, and I think you heard the Guta president yesterday. You heard Chamber of Commerce, you heard AG, everybody. The business community is very resolute this time around that no politician can come to take down. Look, as we speak, inflation. Beginning of this year, the Bank of Ghana, through their monetary team, went to a meeting and upped the inflation rate from 14.5 to 17.
You mean you're talking about the monetary policy rate?
Exactly. That alone affected me, the business community. Again, inflation rate, 53 plus. As we speak now, it's 35 or 33.
It's 35.2.
It's still affecting the business community. You go to the bank to look for loan. Is government giving us any loan? The government bring any business to anybody? Government to create an enabling environment.
So government hasn't created an enabling environment for you?
Not at all, because this government is the government that promises heaven and earth, that they were going to move us from taxation to production. If you go to Tema, VW, or you go to Nissan, or you go to Zonda, then that company bring all the car accessories and come and put it here. Then you say we are doing manufacturing. That's not production. You have increased taxes, you have increased COVID levy, you have brought us from 17.5 to 3% flat rate. You remember that 2017 budget, mid-year budget review, they reversed the 17.5% and they introduced 3% flat rate. And they were cutting 17.5 from the port, cutting 3% from us, and so we shouldn't talk. We've killed business. Business spirit is dying. Businesses are the verge of collapsing. Nobody is declared profit. 2023 budget, mid-year budget review, you're going to introduce sustainable growth. Sustainable growth. Taxes, the trade taxes, that profit before tax. Who is making profit here? Then only some few institutions. majority of business community, that's why they are diverting cargo and the port is empty. Today, when I was there, I look at the way the MPS have invested. So I was telling some of the media, so are we expanding our port to rare poultry farm? No. So that's why I said, if government need money, why is it that his government abolished VAT on aviation fuel? It is the rich people who take plane, who fly. It's not the poor people. Why would this government abolish VAT on real estate? How many of your workers, even your cameraman here, can they afford $300,000, $500,000 to buy real estate? But he can afford 200 Ghana cedis, 300 Ghana cedis, 1,000 to buy cement and more blocks and even build the distant one single room for his wife and the children. Do you know how much a bag of cement is costing? It's as a result of taxes. It's as a result of taxes. Of course, he will speak the way he spoke here because he's living in government bungalow. He's been driven. He's been fueled. I'm sure even his tie, his boat tie, his taxpayers money used to buy for him. Then you come and sit in national television and you talk the way you want and then you walk away. You take yourself from that.
Dr. Dosu-Sarkodie, there's a clear and honest, and in fact, the Deputy Trade Minister did talk about the admission of the concerns of the business community, and what they are faced with. The cost of doing business is high. There's nothing to write home about.
He didn't sympathize with us.
I'm not talking about sympathy. I'm talking about acknowledging that. I didn't say that he even sympathized with you. In the end, it is you and I, the consumer, who bears the brunt, because obviously they are in business. They are not for the Christmas. They'll find a way of passing the cost to us. And in some cases, with what we have seen with the business cycle over the year, some of them are not able to pass on the full effect because they know even the purchasing power of you and I is down. So we can't even buy if they increase the prices. So it's a peculiar concern, is it not? What should be the expectation in addressing some of these issues that Asaki raises?
It's refreshing listening to my brother who is doing the practical work. We sit in the office and we put together data. He's on the field. So sometimes we sit back and listen to them. The private sector, the business community is, we all know they are key to job creation. There are about 12 million Ghanaians who are working and only less than 2 million are employed by government. Every other person is employed by the private sector, including TV3 and media general. So you must always make sure that the environment is sound. And what kind of environment are we talking about? We are talking about the inflation rates. We are talking about the exchange rates. Thank God that the city has stabilized now. We are also talking about interest rates, how much you pay for your cost of borrowing, and then the taxes and levies. So I made something to Bella in the morning. I'm going to repeat it, that taxation has several purposes. Taxes have several purposes. You can tax to raise revenue. You can also tax to achieve another objective like discouraging consumption. Even when you want to tax to raise revenue, you must look at the structure of your economy, go deep down to the sectors and go deep down to the sub-sectors and identify the areas that are doing well, then you tax it. The areas that are struggling, you relieve them. So the business community, manufacturing, AGI, GUTA, they have been complaining time and again. They have been in a meeting with the finance minister, with the AGI and GUTA. He called all of us for that the pre-budget meeting. And these concerns were raised. And I'm sure they will address them. Because if the sector is struggling, you relieve them, then you pass on the taxes on the sectors that are doing well. And I'll mention them, the extractive sector, I'm not shy of that. The telcos. And I told my brother that I would have mentioned the banking sector, but they have already suffered from DDEP, so I'll leave them out. So you look at the areas that are doing well. In the same IMF document, they are projecting the extractive sector to grow at 12% in the midst of economic challenges. So if you are a finance minister and you want revenue, you look at the extractive sector, you look at the telcos, and find a way of dealing with that. So we must all come to a consensus and an agreement. It should be a win-win situation. A win for government in terms of revenue and in terms of job creation, because I've said that these people, they create more jobs than government. So look at the inflation, the exchange rates and interest rates so that they can have some comfort. Even what we call domestic production. Most of the raw materials or the intermediaries are imported. what you even call local production. It's our friends who will still go and import. So look at the duties and the levies and the taxes on all these commodities so that they can produce at a lower cost. Therefore, you and I can have, can purchase these commodities at a lower rate. So the government must listen to them, address the concern, find a way of coming to the equilibrium. That's why in economics we always teach about equilibrium. The equilibrium is where we are all satisfied. We are all at a stable condition.
So we are not moving from there.
You are fine, which I'm fine. Government has a revenue. Our brother also, they have low cost of production and they can expand.
Would you advocate for the restoration of the benchmark values, for instance? Because that's one of the issues they have, that the removal of the benchmark values has also contributed to the increased cost of doing business at the port.
Yes, I think I am a scientific person, and economics is science. You must always speak to the data. I have not actually looked at the data of the imposition and the removal, how it has affected, production. But my brother is in the field, so he can attest to that. If he's saying that if it's brought back, it will help him, then they should consider it.
Either it's brought back.
Mr. Sergeant.
Let's keep it.
He wants to clarify. Let him clarify.
Either it's brought back or they accept transactional values.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you cannot accept transactional value, if an importer brings and says it's $1 million and you say it's $2 million, where will he get the money to come?
Per transactional value, what do you mean? Just
transactional value means the value at which the person pays plus the cost of insurance and freight that he paid, because that's how the assess is based on TIF value.
Yeah. So you just pay that and nothing more.
So if the importer says that this is my goods that I bought it $200,000 US, you cannot make it $400,000 US and calculate the duty on it. That's the stress you are putting on the business community.
Yeah. Okay. So that should be addressed. But if you want revenue, there are other areas that you can get revenue. How many times haven't we talked about property rates? And the potential in the property rate is 2% of GDP. So you're talking about some 18 to 20 billion cedis in a year that you can get. If my brother doesn't enjoy the 50% benchmark values, but he makes profit and goes to put up a building, you go and tax it. And then we are all fine. The potential in the informal sector income tax is about 1% of GDP. So that's around 8 to 9 billion cedis. And so there are other areas, even with the leakages that we talked about, government has invested so much in digitization. So let's leverage that. Let's leverage digitization in revenue mobilization so you can actually get more revenue without necessarily increasing the tax rate or introducing a new tax. Once you are able to plug the loopholes with digitization, you'll be fine. For a typical example, you go to my brother to collect tax and you're asking him to pay cash. The likelihood that the tax collector will dodge, some of the funds is very high. But if it's about, mobile money or something, you pay through the bank, you pay any bank draft, whatever, any new way of leveraging the digitization should be encouraged so that we can lower or plug the loopholes in that direction. So we can government can raise more revenue without necessarily imposing new taxes. This tax discussion has been very sensitive. On one hand, you want government to get revenue. On the other hand, you don't want to overburden. That's why I always talk about the equilibrium. Let's come to a point where both sides are, comfortable in their deliberation. So, we can do a lot without necessarily overburdening the private sector. The private sector is always at the heart of everybody, including me, including government. This government, is a center-right government. They believe in the private sector. So, and I've told you the figures, they employ more people than the government. And so we should support them in their operations.
A very important call there, that support for the private sector, and that's the importers and exporters. Samson Asaki Awingobit, Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association. I still have Gideon Ayi-Owu, is a partner tax and regulatory, Deloitte Ghana. And then also we have Dr. Edward Wusu-Sarkodie, you just heard. He is an economist and also a lecturer at the Economics Department, University of Ghana, Legon. So live here on TV3 coverage of the 2024 budget. The finance minister is expected to present this all-important fiscal document to spell out government policies and then also the costing of government's policy decisions in the fiscal year 2024.